Hello, and thank you all for joining us today for our job hunting tips for foreign trained attorneys, part 2, the question and answer session. I'm Amy Goldstein, Chair of Training Programs for the Legal Mentor Network and founder of Grace and Allen, a recruiting and career coaching firm for attorneys. I'm going to pop a poll up on the screen so that we know how many people attended last time. If I can find. So now I lost the poll. I lost the poll. Okay. So if you could just jump in the Q&A and just write yes or no for whether you attended September 20th. Sorry about that. And for those of you who didn't attend and are not familiar, the Legal Mentor Network is a nonprofit organization focused on providing free legal mentoring to law students and junior attorneys. You can find information not only about the organization, but also about how to join as a mentee or mentor at legalmentornetwork.org. So we had so many great questions and follow-up after our September 20th webinar that it really just made sense to gather again and share the answers broadly. We hope you'll learn from each other's questions and from the insights from the panelists, and that you'll become more confident as you're pursuing your career path here. So we're going to start with some questions that we received in advance. And while that is happening, if you know what your question is, please put it in the Q&A and we will get to as many as possible. So with that, it is my pleasure to turn it over to our moderator, Darren Brom, and we'll go from there with introductions. Darren?
Great, thank you, Amy. Yes, hi everybody. Welcome to part 2. Hopefully, just like The Godfather, the sequel will be better than the original. We have a new guest as well joining us to help give us some insights into how to, find work here in the US, being an attorney trained outside of the US. My name is Darren Braham. I live here in Boston, Massachusetts. I've been in-house for about 9 years now. I did my LLM at Suffolk Law here in Boston as well. Worked at law firms, mainly in the M&A space, and then moved in-house, like I said, several years ago. I'm currently at a management consulting firm here in Boston, overseeing legal in the US. I'll pass it on to my esteemed panel. We'll start with Gilda.
Hi everyone, it's Gülde here, Gülde Alparslan. I was a practicing lawyer before coming to US for about 10 years. Worked in law firms and also a big energy corporation before I moved to US to do my LLM and UCLA in business and corporate law. And after my LLM, I worked in a law firm in LA for a while. And then I moved to a tech startup in software arena, and now I work for SAP as a senior corporate counsel.
Terrific. Thank you, Gilda. We'll do Eduardo next, please.
Thank you, Darren. It's great to meet all of you. I'm Eduardo Fernandez. I'm an associate at Wilkie Farr. Just before coming to the US, I was an attorney in Colombia. I practiced corporate and tax law, and then came to the US, did a master's of law, then a master's of tax law, then a JD at Emory. And finally, I'm here. I've been in Wilkie Farr for more than a year in the corporate and securities department.
Terrific. Welcome again. And Flavia, welcome for the first time.
Thank you, guys. It's wonderful to be here. As Darren said, I did not join the part 1 of this session, so I'm hoping that I can add some additional context for part 2. My name is Flavia Naves. I'm originally from Brazil. I got my LLB at Catholic University in Brazil, and then I came to the United States in 1999. Instead of getting an LLM or a JD or anything like that, I got enough credits at a law school in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania called Widener University, and I sat for the DC bar in 2001. The DC bar is one that does not require LLMs, actually says you need to take so many credits in matters that are tested in the bar exam, and that's what I did. That was in 2001. I never worked in a law firm in the United States. I worked in a law firm in Brazil for about 2 years. When I came here, clerk for a judge right after law school, and then I went in-house. I practiced law in the United States from 2001 until June of this year. When I retired, I was the general counsel of Circle, which is an issuer of a stablecoin called USDC. I'm now doing legal consulting and looking to serving boards and also do some teaching. In 2005, I also became barred in California. So I carry 2 bars in the United States, one in DC and one in California, as well as my original bar in Brazil.
Terrific, welcome, terrific. Yeah, great experience across this panel here. I should have mentioned that I was also admitted as a practicing lawyer in the UK before I moved to Boston, and have an LLB as well. So we have common law, civil law, we have visa issues, we have bar issues. I think, Flavia, I've never heard of someone not doing an LLM or a JD, so that's a super interesting path that you took. And something I started to navigate actually when I first moved here, having to try and figure out each state's requirements, you know, before going through the motions. But we did have a number of questions kind of prior to this webinar. So let me start with those, and then again, if we have additional questions in the chat, I hope please do send in questions as they come up. But let me start with the first one. While it is clear that the job market for LLMs is more challenging because most positions were filled 2 or more years ago for JD students, that'd be 1Ls, 2Ls, I guess, in the summer associate recruiting, how do you think about what strategies to employ to get the most practical, use out of finding a job? So kind of holistically, I guess, how does this panel think about finding a job from an LLM perspective? Thoughts? Who wants to go first? Should we start with Flavia?
Yes. So for me, the way that I focused my career in the United States was to try to find where I could add value that no other JD student could. Right? Because when you leave your LLM, it doesn't matter how long you practice in your country, all the wonderful things that you've done, all this experience that you have, you're competing with people that just graduated from law school. They could be, much younger than you, not only career-wise, but personal lives, and you are competing face-to-face with them. Obviously, you have a background that many employers in the United States don't understand. And they do not want to take the time to understand, because it's much easier just to go with what is true and tested, which is a JD with a college degree underneath, instead of trying to understand who you are, what you can do, and anything else. However, if the employer needs a skill set that only you have that a JD will not have, then you become top of the line. So what I did when I was looking at jobs is, especially when I moved to California, in Pennsylvania, after I clerked for my judge, I had a path because, the job that I took, they knew the judge, and they knew me, and they knew that I would do a good job. But when I moved to California, I had to start anew. So what I did is look at what I could offer that no one else could. And this was my Latin American background, right? I could speak Portuguese where other people couldn't. I could bridge the gap between doing business in Brazil and doing business in the United States, where JD students couldn't, right? So what I did at that time is start looking for jobs in legal jobs that require either fluency in Portuguese or businesses that were doing in Latin America, especially with a focus in Brazil, right? And I found numerous companies in the Bay Area, as you can anticipate, that had that need. And then I became a sought after commodity when I focus on what I could give that was different than anyone else, because the more general than you are, the more in the pool with the JD students you are. And again, employers are lazy. They will go for what is easy instead of trying to understand what you can do. So that's how I did, Darren. I looked for the focus on what I could add that no one else could. And that became my differentiator and my leverage in looking at jobs.
Yeah, no, it's a great story to tell, Flavia. And each of us is a brand, right? And it's up to us to market ourselves in a way. And that's what we do as lawyers, if you're in our law firm, to sell your time, your services, your expertise. But part of that is also marketing, yourself. Gildy, does that resonate with you as well to some extent?
I completely agree with what Flavia said, and I think it's very important to create your own brand. And kind of maybe what I can add on top of what she said is maybe if you're already an attorney or have some sort of experience in your own country, I think it's a good approach to kind of highlight those stuff in your resume versus like what your grades are in the law school or what your graduation like standings are for. I think if you have some sort of experience, I definitely recommend to use it, highlight it and underline it, and kind of like tell the lazy employees, like the way she said, how you can differentiate from the others, just graduate from law school, because you have the attorney mindset, and this is like very important in the business area. You can think like an attorney, even if you're in a different country, you know how to think like an attorney, and kind of like if you work in, I don't know, tax or some specific niche area of law that not many people did. Like for me, it was like an international business law at first, like maritime and aviation law. And I found a job like in LA, specifically doing this niche area of law. And they wanted to hire someone who has like a foreign attorney because like it's a business deal for them as well. I think I told in the first seminar, even if I was hired like not like a attorney position, I was like, my rate is like an attorney rate for the client because they can sell this to the client. Oh, she's an attorney. She's doing this for years back in Europe. So it's an asset for the company, the law firm. And also like I found a job that I can start my legal career in. So it's a win-win situation for both of us. So I think I would highly recommend, on top of what she said, is just kind of like use the experience that you have in your own country and how to translate it in the US law arena.
Yeah, no, makes a lot of sense. And just to dig a little bit deeper, I guess, thinking about how, trying to be diplomatic here, because I work for a company that employs a lot of, people from different countries. So it's not necessarily that people are lazy, although I certainly appreciate that sentiment. Maybe it's just that they're not, educated or kind of sophisticated in how to kind of respond to things that don't fit into a, the round hole into the square peg type, square peg into the round hole type thing, right? So it's challenging. So I think rather than just sending a generic application with a resume, cover letter to an email address or applying online to a company, maybe it's finding somebody at that company who's kind of a decision maker, right? So doing some research, LinkedIn articles, whatever it might be, to try and get the attention of that individual rather than just kind of the initial recruiter that might not be as sophisticated, because that's going to go a long way, I think, to helping your cause and kind of hopefully figuring out if that's the right fit for you. Eduardo, I think you had mentioned previously that you had a ton of experience in your father's company from recollection, and you helped sell that business. Did that translate when you came over here to kind of start doing legal work?
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. Yeah, that resonated. That helped a little bit, and it helped me establish a brand. Much like Flavia said, I just landed in a position whereby I could create a brand, which was tax planning for Latin American individuals and companies investing in the US. And then that business experience just, helped just boost that practice in a tax accounting firm, because I could understand the needs of the business, the needs of the individuals, and then, correlate that into what the tax rules were. So I think that helped a lot. But unlike Flavia, who probably thought about this much more and planned her way into marketing herself and creating a brand, I just landed there, and then once I landed, I was given a computer and said, look at what you can do there. And I think that's where I found out that I could add value somewhere, and that I could differentiate myself from other tax professionals who probably weren't as business savvy, who probably didn't speak Spanish despite being in Miami. And then I could start communicating with clients much more effectively because I could, give them insights about business plus about the tax rules. So I think that worked out very well without planning it.
Yeah. No, that's great. And it's obviously very nuanced what you do, right? And it kind of really speaks to what Flavia was saying, is find something that nobody else does. And I think the tax planning for Latin American companies is kind of right on point. But that's not kind of like, as much as it is hard work, I think there are kind of real hurdles to acknowledge, right? The visa issue, for example, that's obviously challenging and not applicable to everybody probably on this call, but certainly something that you have to get an employer comfortable with if you don't have, a work authorization immediately. So, Gildy, I know you kind of gone through that in a variety of ways. What things can you help educate our audience on when it comes to kind of visa issues?
Yeah, I don't know for how many of the people that applies, but yes, I didn't have a citizenship. I didn't have any US visa when I first came here other than the F1, which is basically what you need for the LLM in the US. But you're right. I mean, the hardest part, I think, to kind of convince the employee to make that investment in you, other than all the other stuff. Yeah, like why they want to like hire you versus they can hire someone with no visa situation at all, because it's not an easy thing for an employee to sign up for. So it's expensive. It's around, I think, $20,000 if you go to the green card path with the employer. And then initially the OPT, I think OPT part is like easier because they don't pay for anything. And you can use that if you can get an OPT, which is, I think, granted for a year time or like maybe like 2 years, depending on your education. For the LLMs, I think they give like 1 year of an OPT, which is called like an optional training. But the bad thing, I think, with the most law schools are they're not helping you. So you're all on your own to find a job who can just grant you to like this OPT like position. So after the graduation, I think you have, if it doesn't change now, around 3 months after graduation, you have time like 90 days to find an employer and then transfer your F1 into an OPT, which is great because it's like a 1 year work and like work visa, and you can work in the area that you studied in a law firm, in any place in a legal capacity, not just a law firm, by the way. It could be nonprofit, it could be like in-house, it could be anything regarding in the area that you studied. So any legal job that can qualify for an OPT, and it's like 1 year. So basically I had my OPT and I haven't even like I told, I think in the first seminar, I didn't take any bar classes because my intention like was never to stay in United States this long. But after I found this OPT and a job in the LA, during my 1 year, I was like, okay, since I'm going to be here another year, why not taking the bar? So for me, it's as challenging as it sounds. It was, I think it's the craziest thing I have ever done because I took the bar, the California bar, with no California bar education at LLM. But I think that was what impressed them because I passed on my first try and they were like, oh, okay, like you look to be like, you seem to be like a smart person, like smart and dedicated. So basically show people like what you can do. And you're competing with JDs with like 3-year like JD degrees and you pass the same exam on your first try. So kind of in my case, that convinced them to sponsor my H-1B. And they're like, yeah, we want you to work for us like longer than a year. And they never sponsored anyone else. They never hired any foreigner like me before. So for them, in my case, showing them like what I can do is the main thing for them to like decide, okay, we wanna continue do whatever you need to stay in this country. So that's how it worked in my case. But I strongly recommend people, like if you're already committed to like stay for the bar, like sit for the bar, because in my case, I was like, if I'm not gonna find a job, I'm gonna go back. Like I already have a nice job, like whatever, because it's tough. Like you need the finances to pay your rents and everything. I'm talking about people like me, not like having a family or anyone like in the United States to support them. If you're just a student, you need to figure out everything, and it has to be like simultaneously. Like you need to have a plan after the law school to pay the rent and how I can sit for the bar, which is also like a costly thing to do for signing up for the bar and like a bar prep program. It's not cheap.
Right.
So for me, I was kind of like, okay, I need to deal with the job situation first. If I can find a job and OPT, I can, work and study at the same time, and I can do this on my own without anyone else, like I'm depending. So that's how it worked for me. But after OPT, then if you convince the employer to do the H-1B for you, then there's another process like filing, and it's more complex than the OPT. But when you get it, it's like 6 years. So you have the 6 years of H-1B. And during that 6 years, again, you can only work for that sponsor, which I changed like 3 times. I told you the story. So if you change your job with the H-1B, then the new employer has to transfer your H-1B. And after the 6 years, during the 6 years, you need to find someone, your H-1B employer or someone else, to sponsor you for the green card. That's the only way to get the green card from an employer-based application. And it was more complex for most of the people I know. It takes like around 2 years with the government processing times. But the last part of the last section of the green card is depending on what nationality you're from, and it may differentiate because of your nationality. I know I have like some Indian friends that they're still waiting for like more than 6 years for the last phase of the green card. But for most of the other countries, I believe it's around 1.5 to 2 year process. And then after that, finally, after you get the green card, now you're free to work for any employer, not just the sponsor that sponsor you for the H-1B. And it's like a huge restriction, right? I mean, you're like Flavia said, like you kind of like promote for your branding how good you are, or like what different like tools that you have. But at the same time, you need to convince them on top of that to file for this green card application, which is again like around, I think, $20,000 for an employer. And most of the thing is like the paperwork, and there's like to be like a law firm dedicated for this. So what I've seen, like my personal experience, yes, I've seen law firms sponsoring foreign attorneys like us, but I think comparing to the in-house positions, it's not that common, to be honest. Like, I mean, I think I need to say that. I mean, if you need visa sponsorship, I think the better approach is to land the position like compliance officer, or like whatever capacity you can in a big corporations, especially in tech, because they are doing it like for all the other talents. Like most tech companies like sponsors everyone, like engineers from like the developers. So like for the law department, it's not a big issue because they're doing it for all the other people, like the high talents that they sponsor and come take the talent in the United States. So I think tech has a great opportunity for people like us to, especially if they need the sponsorship, a better approach to follow, I think, versus expecting a law firm to file a green card application for you, because the competition in the legal firms, I think, is like very high. And like the way we talked about, like there's like a JD PET students, like 3-year JD education, and they have no visa situation at all. So why would I hire someone like me and also like sponsor them for the green card? I think it's mixed. I'm not saying it's impossible. I've seen examples like they did, but I'm saying like I think chances are higher if you want to pursue a career, especially until you get your green card. If you still want to like work for the law firm, you can after you get the visa situation done. But I think for the first step, I think it's easier if you do in-house and pick like the industries like tech or maybe tech, that higher rate of like sponsoring people versus like traditional like
Right.
big law firms.
I think it's challenging, right? Yeah, thank you for that insight. I think it's challenging. You're on the one hand, right, to go the easier route for the visa, but on the
Yeah.
other hand, from an experience perspective, in-house is probably harder to get when you're more junior. So it's constant tension. Maybe Flava, you've seen that when you were at Circle, kind of, as Gilly mentioned, kind of the tech side, there's a lot of H1Bs, which is also a lottery, right? So once that lottery gets
Exactly.
out, it's hard to even get, go that route.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's what I was gonna say, having been the GC of Circle, obviously, we did immigration of several employees to the business on all sorts. And it was absolutely what it is that is adding value to the organization. The cost is a cost that the business is going to have, is a business cost that they're going to write off in their whatever they do, right? I'm not the accountant or the CFO, but it's a cost that the business will absorb to bring the talent because they are investing in that person, and that person will stay with them for a certain period of time to make the money back on what they're doing. They will have outside counsel that is going to run this application for you. Is one of another 100 that are being run by that law firm. So it's really not adding time or complexity or anything. So to go to this point, like in-house positions will come, to Darren's point, when you're less senior. Corporations, like to hire people with 5+ years of legal experience at least, but I'm the living proof. I was 3 years in this country and I got hired in-house. And the reason for that is they needed something that no one else could give them but me, right? So I go back to that building a brand and finding the value that you can give that no one else can. They came to me because I could give something that no one else could. So they will make exceptions for people that have a background, either your country, your language, or anything like that, or even then, you practice a very bespoke area of the law in your country of origin, and no one else here in the US has done it. It's a very bespoke area, irrespective of that, they will hire you. But again, it's that unique trade that you have that no one else has, and it becomes your competitive advantage. So you really have to find that. And once you do, the employer will make the business cost, they will absorb that cost to keep you with them.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, this is such great insights. I teach negotiation at a law school in my spare time, and one of the kind of things I tell my students is preparation, right? And I'm just thinking about this now. I think the same philosophy applies, right? As soon as you're applying for an LLM, you should be thinking really about, one, obviously the content of the LLM, and it keeps you interested for the year, 18 months that it's going to take you to graduate. But also, is it in a place where there's a corporation that might be have offices that you're interested in, or other opportunities for professors, or there's all these things you should be thinking about, preparing for, and really using that OPT that we talked about as a jumping off point to kind of start to launch your career as well. So it's a really great opportunity because you don't need an additional visa for the OPT, and it's a chance to go work for a company, right, and show them what you can do to everyone's point so far. So really start thinking about the OPT from day one of the LLM and trying to find the best opportunity that you can. Other questions, let me see real quick. Do you have any general tips on how to translate LLM background into a US legal market language? Eduardo, what do you think about that? What's some thoughts that you could offer?
Sorry, I think that the LLM, and I think I said it in our last event, the LLM, you need to tailor it to whatever competitive advantage you want to show to potential employers. So, taking a criminal law class in the LLM when you want to be a corporate lawyer might not be the best, option for you. So in order to translate, these classes that you receive in the LLM, which mostly you will have with JDs that will compete with you once you graduate, you should, try to tailor this path and it has to be a very neat path into going into a law firm and being able to translate that knowledge that you have into and apply it, to real world problems. I think I did that when I went into the tax LLM, and it served me very well because I could basically market myself in what I had been doing for the last 5 years in Colombia, and then coming to the US, showing that I knew about now international taxation and US taxation and working with Latin America just gave me a very interesting mix that could allow me to create this brand that I then created just unknowingly. So, we can translate the LLM classes and the LLM knowledge to, an application, just that, you just need to make it as neat as possible. Also, the other thing is just coming back to the previous discussion, I think that not only the classes are important, but also trying to meet people that are in the same space where you want to belong. If it's corporate law, going to meetings with corporate lawyers, trying to look for mentorship opportunities, speaking with your professors so that they can introduce you to practitioners. Most of the LLM classes bring in guest speakers from different law firms, trying to capitalize relations, but not asking first time, about jobs and about job hunting, but, establishing this big relationship with potential employers and first becoming a friend of them. That's, I think, really important. So both, doing the classes that are relevant for your practice, and second, meeting people and making yourself relevant with these people that potentially might become your employers, I think is a good mix.
I think that's great. That's great advice. Yeah, no, just to kind of bounce off of that, really. When I first moved to Boston, we had there was very few LLM students, very few non-US attorneys practicing here in the state, and that was because the rules were quite strict. And one way that I kind of found kind of like-minded folks was by going to the big law firms and looking up bios to see where people are graduated from and if they were from a US school or from a non-US school. And I found 2 or 3 different people in that way. One person was from Ireland, one person was from the UK, one person was from France. So there are things that you can do, and then bar associations, like you said. We ended up having a foreign lawyers committee that we kind of again had a kind of collective communal experience that we all shared, and that kind of led to meeting other folks who were working in the international kind of cross-border world. So again, it does take work. There are kind of opportunities that you have to kind of find and work towards, but certainly not insurmountable in that way. Flavia, any thoughts from you on kind of how to translate, not necessarily LLM background because you don't have that, but your non-US backgrounds?
Yeah, for me, it was kind of like Eduardo said, when I actually came here and I decided which bar that I wanted to take, I was looking to DC because of just the international space, right? I'm not a New York person, but I love Washington. I think it's beautiful. So I was choosing to live in the city, in the district. And that was the bar. I was not interested in Maryland or Virginia, like most people here do Maryland or Virginia and wave into DC. I took the DC bar, me and 35 other people. It's a very small bar exam. And but it's just as tough. It's just very little people choose the DC bar in itself. So when I was looking at my classes, like Eduardo said, I knew what I wanted to do. Like I want to be in-house. So if I want to be in-house, I'm going to be looking for classes that are going to translate into in-house. So contracts, business organizations, conflicts of law. I am not doing torts, criminal procedure. I'm not doing these things because what am I going to do with that stuff? I'm going to learn that at Barbary so I can take the bar exam, but I'm not going to devote my studies to that. So my certificate that I got from Widener was very much focused into business, so that I started looking at that. And funny enough, the first job offer that I got was from a judge to do litigation, right? Which is completely different than my arena or anything that I've ever wanted to do. But the one thing that I recommend to everyone here is remain flexible and do not set a road in a path that is like, I want to do A, B, and C, and unless I do it in this order, I don't want to do it, right? Because what you learn after many years of legal career is that your path is never linear, never linear. It's a roller coaster of emotions, especially if you work in-house, because companies get acquired, things happen, and you get placed in different places, you move around, right? So I remained open to different opportunities that I could never imagine that I would end up doing, such as clerking for a judge. That took me to my first job. And then when I got here, I started doing it one and one and one, ended up working in a variety of industries. I started with, like judicial work, then I went to intellectual property and technology licensing. That I work in entertainment. I work at Univision. Then from there, I went into music licensing, and then from there I went into payment, and then from there I went into cryptocurrency. So all the industries that I've worked took me to the place that I ended up, which my goal at the end was to be the general counsel of a public traded company. And I did that, but I did it by being flexible and allowing my background to really follow me instead of saying, I must do this, right? And we are all lawyers, and lawyers are like plans, and we all like plans, and we want to know exactly what we're doing the next day, and that's okay, but allow for flexibility in that so that you can pivot if things don't work out exactly the way that you planned and go in a different direction, knowing that at the end of the day, you want to get to this place, the road that you get there may be different than what you originally envisioned, right? So I really focus on getting my education tailored to what I wanted to do, what is to work in-house, so a lot of corporate law work or anything related to that. And then once I started my path, I started leaving it room for flexibility and like you guys said, networking to death into what I wanted to do. Even if I wasn't doing exactly what I wanted to do, I was building my network around me to take me there. And that's how I did it.
Yeah, and that all resonates with me as well. It takes time, and you have to be persistent, and you have to kind of excel at what you do when you're doing it, right? So the work that you're doing at that time, whether it's music licensing, or I was at a couple of law firms before moving in-house, and went into an industry that I had no idea about when I took my first in-house role, but spent a lot of time getting up to speed on all the various issues that come up, and it's hard to do when you're in the day-to-day thick of being an in-house lawyer and just dealing with contracts and questions and whatnot. But it's really incumbent on you to kind of persist and be the best that you can, and often opportunities will present themselves along that kind of non-linear route that you talked about. So that's when you have to make a decision, right? And say, do I want to go this way or do I want to go this way? And you make an educated decision based on what you have in front of you. So that certainly resonates. Just a couple of, I guess, tips though to think about, to help with kind of the hard work though, right? So sending in a resume, for example, and a lot of us might be accustomed to a more of a CV, curriculum vitae type template. And I'm sure we've all collectively seen 1,000 different resumes over the course of our careers, right, of different people, especially LLMs. So what tips can you give to folks who are kind of putting together what they think might be a US style resume? Eduardo, let's start with you.
I think that a star resume is a one-pager. And it sometimes doesn't resonate to lawyers trained in civil countries, mostly because we were accustomed to the 2-page memo where we draft most of our good deals and our bad deals, and we explain a lot of things. I think here everything has to be much more straightforward, and it's very difficult, in one page to just be able to market yourself and show this brand that we're talking about. So it's tough. I think a good resume has to be accompanied by a good cover letter where we can, explain and market ourselves much better than, the few bullets that you can write in a resume. The second thing is, prioritizing. What is really what you want to convey? Do you want to convey that you're a great attorney? Do you want to convey that you did well in your classes? Do you want to convey that you have had a coherent and consistent path in your life, or that you're inconsistent and that you want consistency? Like, you first need to understand where you're applying and what position you're applying to. And it's not like, I just send resumes out and I send 100 resumes out the same way, because each law firm, each partner, each tax accounting firm has different backgrounds, has different interests, different work they provide. And it's as simple as, some tax lawyers who work in international tax do FATCA classifications, some don't. So if you bring them, if you bring someone that doesn't do FATCA classifications, a resume that speaks only about FATCA, you're just wasting an opportunity, and a very valuable opportunity to present yourself. So, it takes much more time than we think to send a good resume, to apply to a firm, and then to be able to continue the conversations with that firm, if that makes sense, Darren.
Does. Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. And we have a follow-up question in the chat, a live question. What are the chances that employers look for specifically qualified JD students? Some job listings ask for a JD for the applicant. Is it okay that an LLM student with an LLB applies for that role? What matters more, the bar license to practice or the JD degree? Gilda, what do you think? Gilda, can you hear me?
Sorry, I was muted. Yes, I think, I had the same obstacle when I'm applying for the jobs. Most of the ones, especially like in law firm arena, like requires for a JD, and they mention like a JD, or sometimes they say like JD equivalent, so which basically what we have. So I would love to use like this, like I'm looking for this word. If they say it's like JD equivalent, yes, like if you have a law degree in your country and on top of the LLM, you can definitely apply. And I think most of the time, it really doesn't matter if it's not like the super traditional law firm just following the same path over and over in the hiring process. But I think I agree with Eduardo, if you can tailor your resume specifically for like what that job listing, like because they mention. So I completely, like I strongly advise like reading the job postings with that glasses on. Like what are they actually need? What kind of qualities they look in the candidate, not just the JD, but what else, like in terms of the business that they are in. If it's like a litigation, like what kind of litigation? Like are they doing like, I don't know, personal injury or like whatever? Like if you can like connect the gap, like the bridge of this job posting, like your education here or like back in home, it doesn't matter. If you did some sort of like that kind of work in that arena, I think you should definitely tailor your resume and the cover letter and speak to them as if like you're interviewing. It's not like copy and pasting the same thing over and over and then sending like everyone out like 100 like job postings like throughout the day. I think if you can do 1, 2, maybe like 5 like very well tailored like application, I believe your chances of like hearing back from them is like higher than just like copying and pasting stuff. And again, I'm seeing mostly in the in-house positions that they mention JD/LLM or like JD/JD equivalent. So definitely use, I mean, it shouldn't stop you to apply any of the positions if you think you are a good candidate, but you will highlight why you're a good candidate other than your degree. Degree is like one thing, but if you can convince them that you have more than just one JD degree, then I think you have a better chance and you will interview. Like, I mean, there's like the next step is interviewing. So the first thing, what are you doing with resumes is just like gathering an attention of this hiring person, hiring manager, whoever it is. And the next step will be like you're interviewing actually and talking about the background that you put on the resume. So I think on the resume, now even like I saw people using the technology, like, you know, the generative AI to customize their resume, and they're pretty successful, to be honest. So I'm saying like use everything that you can have in terms of resume tailoring, That could be like your university's student counseling, or like this law mentor network. There are like tons of resume tailoring resources out there online, free, and use the terms of technologies, because I think technology helps when they're picking the keywords of the job posting and matching it with your resume. So anything that you can use, I think, will be helpful, just to take the first step in the doorstep, and then you're on your own explaining yourself during the interview. So to answer the question, it shouldn't stop you to say like just JD, but just find the stuff in the job posting that you can like relate to with your background.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Terrific. Another couple of questions in the chat here. Do you specifically look for employers from your respective countries to make it easier to convince them to hire you? Flavia, what do we think?
No, I did not. I did look for businesses that had operations in my home country, like I said in the beginning, right? So I looked for businesses that had offices in Brazil, but I did not reach out to the Brazilian person to hire me. I reached out to the general counsel in the United States, right? So no, I didn't think that would, is a technique, certainly something you can try, but that was not how I focus on that. And just to add one sentence to the prior question, an LLB with an LLM is the same thing as a JD. Do not let any job stop you from it. Do not let these letters mean anything, right? You are qualified to take the bar exam. You're just as qualified as a JD student to take the bar exam. So the one thing that is a differentiator, though, is if you don't have the bar, then you cannot practice law. And a JD student, the same thing, okay? So even if you have a JD and you don't take the bar exam, you're not going to get a lawyer job. You're going to get a paralegal job, or you're going to get a compliance job, but you're not going to be legal counsel because you cannot practice law until you're barred. So the bar is a very important thing if you want to practice law. Now, if you are okay being a paralegal because you like doing that work, or legal ops, or anything else around that, right? Or a privacy manager or anything like that. Or you want to be a compliance officer. You want to do something else in the compliance arena, policy, right? Head of policy or anything like that. None of these things require a bar license, and you're going to be applying your legal skills. I can tell you that out of a compliance team, the last one that I was in, over 90% of the people in that team had law degrees. They were just not practicing. They chose not to take the bar, or they practiced law for some time and said, I don't want to do this anymore. So there's a lot of room to get an LLM or a JD and not practice law and still have a very fulfilling career if you don't want to take the bar exam. But the bar exam is critical if you want to practice law either in-house, in a law firm or anything. And you will be sitting for the bar exam the same way that a JD student will. If the bar tells you you're eligible to take the bar exam, that's it. So don't let the JD letter stop you from sending a resume out to anyone. Your LLM degree makes you eligible to practice law in this country the same way that it does for a JD. It's just getting to Gilda's point, that interview that you need to get. So don't let those letters scare you.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. And I'd say there is one difference between LLB and LLM and JD. It's about $100,000. So I think that's a good route to take sometimes. But seriously, so we had another question come through about, I know this is kind of, let's say all things being equal, we have the visa, we have the LLM, we're eligible to take the bar exam. It's a tough market, right? The market is shrinking, and there's wars going on, and people are anxious, and it's just hard to find a job. And it's even harder with the stiff competition that we've talked about with our JD peers. So a lot of our audience and folks that I've spoken to as well are applying for the paralegal roles that you talked about, the compliance roles that we've talked about, and are running into this issue of feeling overqualified for a role, but at the same time don't want to scare off potential employers by taking on this role because they need to pay the bills, right? So what are some things that we can think about here? One of the questions that came in prior to the webinar was, should I not put down that I've taken the bar exam, or I'm waiting for the results? Should I not put down that I plan to be an attorney some point down the road? What things can I think about when it comes to applying for these types of roles? Flavia, go for it.
I actually had that experience, not myself, but a colleague of mine when I was at Intuit. So I had this person reach out to me on LinkedIn, cold email. Okay. She had been barred she was a lawyer from India. She had come to the United States and she had taken her LLM. She had not taken the bar exam yet. And she was looking for a paralegal job. There was a paralegal job open at the law department, and she reached out to me because, she saw kind of a similar background. I never met her, did not know her from anything. So Flavia, I'm looking and everything. And because I knew the experience that I had going through this, I wanted to help her overcome that initial job challenge. So I got up from my chair and I walked to the office of the person that was hiring for that job. And he said those things. He said, I need a paralegal. I don't need a corporate counsel. What is it that guarantees me that she's not going to want a different job, next year? I said, nothing. Nothing guarantees that. But you know what you're getting? You're getting a lawyer, a trained lawyer for a paralegal job. And you know what? Maybe a year from now, you no longer need a paralegal. You need a corporate counsel. You don't know. And she also doesn't know. So instead of being firm in what you're doing, give her a chance. So I convinced him to hire her, and he hired her and came to me and said, thank you for doing that. It's the best hire I've ever met. Yes, she took the bar, and yes, she became corporate counsel, and they hired her as corporate counsel. And now she's another very large tech company in the Bay Area. She's at Pinterest as a director, and she moved on from that job. But yes, that very first job, there is no guarantee. And someone may look at it and say, no, you're overqualified, or no, you're going to want a different job than one I'm offering you. And I wouldn't say to hide it, because then you're already starting in a position that you're not being honest and completely forthcoming with your employer. If your employer is going to hire you in as a paralegal and a year from now offer you a corporate counsel job, it's because you deserve that and you're ready for it, right? And so you may say, yes, I'm trained lawyer right now, I'm working as a paralegal, but in the future, I may be open to a corporate counsel job, right? And to discussing that. So I wouldn't say to hide it, just have a different conversation about it and find the person that is willing to take that chance on you, because they are out there. Those people do exist, and they will hire you for the potential that you have.
No, that's great. That's a great experience. Yeah, I fully agree with that sentiment. It's not worth misleading your employer or starting off your relationship, on that foundational issue. So, and listen, being a paralegal, while you may feel overqualified, right, you're still new to the US, right? And being a paralegal is a great opportunity to learn the foundations of US legal landscape. Do probably more administrative work than maybe you want to do, but at the same time, there's opportunities to kind of do some really substantive work as well. And I wouldn't discount that as well, even though the salary is probably not as high as obviously a starting associate. But at the same time, paralegals get paid pretty well here, probably a lot more than in other countries for an attorney. So again, it's what do you want, and how do you want to get there is kind of the things you need to be thinking about. Amy, we're almost close to time. Do we have any more questions in the chat?
That is it for questions. Anybody have any last minute thoughts? Well then, Flavia?
Can I just leave you all with a positive thinking? It's hard, but it's not impossible. If it were, the four of us would not be in this call. Don't let anyone tell you that it's impossible and send you back to your home wherever you are, you're supposed to go. Fight for what you want and you will get it, because the four of us fought for it and we got it. right? So again, it's not easy. It's not the same as it is for a JD student, but it's not impossible. So if you're committed, persist, like try, be flexible, find ways. If this door closes on you, look, why is it that this door closed? How can I learn from this so that the next one doesn't close? Pivot, be flexible, and find that path ahead of you, because the doors will open. You're just going to have to persist and find different ways to knock on that door. So just don't let people tell you you're not going to be able. I had when I was taking my bar exam, and I'm going to tell you this story just to leave you guys with it. When I was taking my first bar in DC, I approached the instructor for Barbary, and I introduced myself, and I said, hey, I'm a foreign trained attorney. I'm taking the bar exam here. And his answer to me was, oh, don't feel bad if you don't pass the bar exam. It's very hard for foreign trained attorneys to do that. So I left that either thinking, okay, he was trying to be nice to me and kind of soften the blow if I don't pass the bar, or be like, who are you? And who are you to judge what I can and cannot do? You don't know me, right? So I passed the bar in my first try in DC, and I passed my bar in the first try in California. And it's because people were doubting what you can do. Don't let people doubt what you can do. You're the only one who knows what you can do as a professional, no one else. So be persistent. This is your career, no one else's. It's difficult, but it's not impossible.
It's hard to top that inspirational message. So thank you so much to everybody. Please do reach out to any of us on LinkedIn. I had about 35 requests for LinkedIn on the part one. So I'm always happy to chat, and people help me, when I first started, and it's important to pay that forward. So thank you, Amy, for this forum, and look forward to connecting soon.
Yeah, thank you, Darren, Gulda, Eduardo, Flavia, for joining us today. This has been great. Thank you, everyone, for attending. This session has been recorded, and it will be available within the next few days. If you don't receive an email with it attached, just feel free to reach out. And for those of you who are wondering, if you hide the chat, the poll is hidden also. I figured that out eventually. And we do have upcoming programming starting in January. We're taking a little break for year end. We have a Path to In-House program on January 17th. You will get to see Flavia again. If you liked what she said today and you're interested in learning more about in-house, she'll be part of that panel. And then we have a resume workshop February 28th and an interview workshop on April 3rd, and we're going to keep going from there. So thank you again, everyone. Have a great rest of the day.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Take care.